there's almost this invisible quality that you have to have. How do you transition to that world for yourself?
Well, I practice becoming invisible, and moving quietly, moving around the subject, not letting off too much energy, but keeping my camera in view so that they can see what I'm going to do.
There's oftentimes that tension that makes a good picture, which is that the camera is clearly there, but that it somehow isn't distorting things too wildly. My interest in war, my identity as an American, and my interest in journalism and photography is all kind of crystallizing into like one very clear path for me. The more I've learned about photography, the more I've almost been able to slow down time.
I've had the rare opportunity to meet many amazing photographers who move through the different landscapes to create powerful images. I'm always inspired by how these images transform the way we see people and understand the world. A great photograph needs no explanation, but on Capture, these incredible people tell the story of creating their most memorable images. I'm Mark Seliger, and this is Capture.
Hi, I'm Mark Seliger, and welcome to Capture. Today I'm joined by Golden Globe-nominated actor Aaron Eckhart, whose hit films include The Rum Diary, Thank You for Smoking, and The Dark Knight. He's also a self-proclaimed photo geek who sees a connection between photography and acting through the use of creativity and imagination to tell the story. And Peter Van Agtmael, a photographer whose documentation of the consequences of an American war in Iraq and Afghanistan have brought him critical acclaim and awards. He was a recipient of the 2012 W. Eugene Smith Award. Thank you both for coming today. It's great to be sitting here in the presence of such talent. How did you start in photography? Because it's not only, it seems like it's a passion, but it's kind of, now it's an extension of who you are.
Yeah, it's really consumed my life. I was on a photo shoot with Herb Ritz one time, and Herb and I started talking about photography. And then I went to the David Fahey Gallery, and I started looking at prints, and I couldn't believe how much the prints cost. Herb had a show there, and they were beautiful black and white prints. And I decided, well, I'm not gonna buy that picture. I'm gonna go out and buy a camera. And I'm gonna buy a lens and some film, and I'm gonna get a teacher, and I'm going to make that picture.
You never studied photography in college? It wasn't like something that...
No, I was really consumed with acting. I was a surfer, a big surfer. I lived in Hawaii, Australia, and that consumed my life. And when I got into acting full time, it really, as you guys know, I mean, whatever your passion is, you only have room for that. So.
Do you think there's a connection in surfing and photography and acting? Do you think that there's like a kind of mindset?
Staying in the moment. And being totally aware at all times, and not judging, and knowing when to click the shutter or to say the right thing or not say the right thing or take the right wave. It's all about using your instincts.
Yeah. Speaking of instincts, Peter, you seem to have enormous amount of instinct in terms of the work that you do. And how did you get started? Because I know that you studied at Yale.
Mm-hmm. I studied history, actually.
Oh, okay.
I'm self-taught in photography. For whatever reason, kind of almost from like the dawn of my conscious thought, I had an interest in war. Maybe it's something to do with growing up in the suburbs with a loving family and everything being perfect and wondering why so much of the rest of the world is in chaos. And in college, I started getting interested in journalism, and I read a few books about Vietnam. Turned me on, started leading me to photographers, and then suddenly I realized what a camera was capable of. "9/11 happened when I was a sophomore, and then the invasion of Iraq when I was a senior. And suddenly I sort of realized, very quickly, okay, my interest in war, my identity as an American, and my interest in journalism and photography is all kind of crystallizing into like one very clear path for me. And so at that point I realized, okay, this is what I need to do.
How do you determine that you're going to be a war photographer, and then how do you start?
It didn't necessarily come entirely natural to me because, I grew up in the suburbs and I went to Yale. I led a very existence isolated from reality. I was pretty naive, so I didn't want to jump right into a war zone. And so I lived in China for a year on a fellowship out of college, and then I moved to South Africa for a year. And that was, there I started kind of testing my limits a little bit, pushing into different areas that were well outside my comfort zone. First, there was this sort of excitement, doing what I thought I needed to be doing with my life, followed by a certain amount of horror as I started seeing, people die around me, and was threatened with death on many occasions myself.
Which is
And
this,
then-
this image that we're looking at right
yeah.
here. That looks like a terrifying experience there, and pretty close to something.
It was in some ways. At that point, I'd already been covering war for about 3 years when I finally was able to take an IED picture that worked. I'd been hit by a bunch of IEDs already at that point. Pictures just never worked out. Usually I was in a vehicle. But that one I finally did. And at that point, it's like I was so, things slow down when you become a photographer. And I feel like the more I've learned about photography, the more I've almost been able to slow down time. It happened just about when I thought it was going to happen, actually. So I was ready. I was just going to they're either going to start shooting or something's going to blow up. Something blew up. So I shot it and took a knee at the same time. No, thank God they blew it up too soon. I started running forward with these other guys. I was shooting on the fly and expecting to see these mangled, running forward towards the blast.
The other guy.
Not running backwards. You
What
can't
was
do
their
that with the
attitude?
Marines, They'll never let you on another patrol if you don't do what they do. But after a few months of fighting every day, fighting becomes normal too. It's always amazing to me, how quickly we as humans can adjust to a new normal, even if it seems insane from the outside world.
Aaron, when we first met, you were talking about kind of a broad range of work that you were doing, but you zoned in with AmeriCare.
AmeriCares, they contacted me and asked me to represent them, and I said, whenever I do anything with a charitable organization, I always say, I'll do it if you let me shoot, because that's my contribution to you. It's, of course, and then I give the photographs to the organization, and then they have a show or something like that. So these are just little examples of when I went to the Dominican Republic, and we went to hospices that all over the country.
I really like this one.
Yeah,
What was that?
this is like a 15-year-old girl who just had her baby. Now they're trying to educate all the women down there to breastfeed and how to take care of their children and this, that. And this gentleman was dying here.
There's almost this invisible quality that you have to have, and to be able to capture people. How do you transition to that world for yourself?
Well, I practice becoming invisible, and moving quietly, moving around the subject, not letting off too much energy, being very benign, but keeping my camera in view so that they can see what I'm going to do, but somehow building trust.
Do you have one thing that you'd like to shoot? Landscape, fashion, documentary, street work?
I love street photography, I love fashion, and I want to marry the two.
Yeah.
I would like to put a beautiful woman in a serious working relationship with the subject that's going on in the pictures, whether you're in Africa or South America in a mine or wherever it is. I think they could be dynamic pictures. I tried to do it with some models that I've dated and been involved with, and we've come up with some pretty good pictures.
I did something very similar to that last week, actually. I've done a few of these with a friend of mine who's a stylist, and this time we went down to Gainesville, and he brings a couple bags of designer clothes, and we just walked around, went to some bars, some restaurants, and just found people who we thought had this kind of, sort of distinct beauty to them. They weren't models, they weren't just regular people living there. He puts them in the clothes, and we just kind of have them, act natural, interact with either their friends, or maybe we put a couple strangers together if we think they'll look good together, and the process just kind of unfolds naturally.
Just starting to work for Rolling Stone, we used to invite cover subjects to go on these little mini trips. no publicists, no stylists. We would take a bag of clothes like you talked about, and we'd meet like Brad Pitt in Mexicali.
Yeah, cool.
Near San Diego. And, we would spend 2 days just kind of walking on the street. And by the end of the day, the sun would be setting. There'd be beer and doobies and music, Neil Young in the background. And we'd be in the middle of Mexico somewhere. We had no idea where we were.
Yeah.
And, those were the good old days when, you let the experience become an event, and then the photographs were just fantastic.
Yeah.
I think there's a real bridge to, photography, to filmmaking, obviously, and to music. I think those are the kind of the great triangles of the world, when it comes to that. Why do you think that?
Because you can do it alone. It's a solo thing, man. I mean, you can be in control of, you can be creating art by yourself and wherever you are in the world at day or night, and that's an actor's best friend, and plus I think actors and musicians it's all about composition. It's all about putting things in place one after another or in the frame, and so you're always looking in pictures.
Along those lines, I think there's probably something to wanting to inhabit different worlds as well. I mean, I've never acted in any form, but I can see like the fascinating quality of like kind of becoming someone else for a period of time.
Yeah.
And photography, you always remain yourself, but you are constantly entering into these different worlds. I mean, I remember this really bizarre. I've had a lot of bizarre experiences, but one particularly like striking one was I was doing the story about Jeff Bridges some years ago. This great thing where I just went around the country with him for about 10 days as he was promoting Crazy Heart, and he was a great guy. Had a good time, and I went to the like Golden Globes after party with him and some other folks. The next day I was going to Haiti. The earthquake had just struck. So 24 hours later, I was in Port-au-Prince in the midst of the like kind of the apocalypse, it seemed. That felt like some bizarre movie to go from these different worlds so rapidly. But it's I find that like a fascinating challenge. If you're photographing something like war, you don't alter or distort beyond the very act of taking pictures. Of course, that is a distortion.
This was not a donkey that you brought in.
That was not. Yeah, I didn't ship that donkey in. That was
Because like at first I thought maybe that was something that you had brought in with your camera bag.
It was there though.
Well, thank goodness it was there, because that would otherwise have been a pretty boring day.
When I was looking through, when we were culling down some of the photographs today, I was seeing the sense of complex compositions, a surreal quality to the work, obviously storytelling, but this could be a great still from a movie. It made me nervous because it looked like a real scene, but you tell me that's there's something else going on there.
Yeah, it's a training down at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. They have these fairly realistic training courses that simulate you being under fire. What the military does well is it creates these instinctual responses, and that's what something like this was meant to do.
Aaron, you were telling me a little bit about you being in this incredible situation in Puerto Rico when you were doing Rum Diaries.
Yeah, when we were in Rum Diary, I had some time off, so I would go walk around with my camera, and there was a little street gang that would
follow you?
Congregate. Well, they wouldn't follow me. They would congregate on a bridge, and they were known as a little gang, and they would terrorize people and this sort of thing. And I just walked in among them one day, and then for weeks and weeks I took pictures of them. I would just come and go as I please, get in the middle of them, get right in their faces, and I got very honest pictures because they weren't performing for me. And I felt like that there was some truth in those pictures.
What's your favorite moment?
My favorite moment is when they're all sitting on the railing of the bridge, and just after having been in the water, so they're dripping wet and looking out, and you can see each one of their personalities. When I look at the picture, I imagine, I dream about their futures. Where are they now? What are they doing? And how I was in their life for that little bit of time.
And that's what can be fascinating about photography. Sometimes it flips from one end to the other. I mean, certainly I've been on patrols where bad things happen, and suddenly the soldiers who like having a photographer there to document what they're doing so they don't feel so anonymous in this distant war, suddenly they don't like you being there so much. It's something that's occupied a lot of my attention. You know, I've been forced to reckon with mortality in these last years.
And when you say that, how do you mean?
I've been injured during the Egyptian Revolution. I got pretty cooked by a mob.
What happened?
There was this sort of street battle going on this day. I think you guys might have seen on TV, all these like camels had charged in Tahrir Square, and people were fighting with rocks, and my gut was telling me, keep your camera in your bag until you get through to the anti-government protesters because they're on your side. But there was this moment where there's just this amazing. I could see just sort of in the distance, there were hundreds of rocks in the air, not close enough to hit me yet at that point, but it was like a flock of birds. And it was just this like surreal and quite beautiful and violent tableau. And I thought, my God, this is amazing. I have to take a picture. And as soon as I took my camera out, a guide basically like spotted me, and just a bunch of people just set upon me and another guy I was with, and yeah, beat the piss out of us. And actually, luckily, some people came and kind of pulled us out of the mob and carried us to the army, which, you know, may have saved our lives.
Yeah. Oh. You ever have that on a film set? Just it's like the catering mob just kind of just landing right into you.
I don't
or landing
recommend
into
it to
them.
anybody, honestly. It was terrible.
Aaron, a lot of the pictures that I'm seeing here from the work in the DR is a very close, intimate experience where you're actually, you know, you're really on top of your subjects and you're connected to them, and obviously very difficult situations. Tell me about that relationship that you had with your subjects.
Well, that's it's building trust, and it's asking permission without words and with energy, you know, and saying, I'm going to do right by you. I'm putting myself in this situation. It's a very vulnerable situation. They don't know why you're there. They don't know where the pictures. They're dying. So I think it is the most personal. When you're getting, their energy says to you, yes, you can take a picture. And so I think it's sort of sacred, and that's what I love about photography.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the camera is a strange thing. It's either welcomed or loathed, and sometimes it's just tolerated, but usually it's one thing or the other. And sometimes you have to work at being welcomed because people become so self-conscious about it and about wanting to look good that it breaks down, you know, the naturalness you're trying to achieve. When I won this Eugene Smith Award, it was to photograph from the civilian side of the war. Every war is confusing and complicated, but I think I'm most interested in the ones that like really confound resolution in a way.
It's a very personal journey.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the type of, for lack of a better word, war photography that I'm interested in, is making it very personal.
We put together some random questions about this and that, and we pass the ball around and everybody gets a chance to throw an answer out. What photographer has inspired you the most?
I would say somebody like, you know, James Burroughs or something like that, or a fashion photographer, even like Avedon or whoever. I don't know. They're generic answers, but you know,
but
all beautiful photographs. And you go on the internet today. I like go on the internet. I type in a name that just pops into my head, and then I put photographs after it. And so I just randomly look at people's photographs. I've done it for years and years and years. And you see amazing photographs from amateurs to pros and everybody in between. And you go, nobody's ever going to see these. And, you know, there's a lot of good photographers out there.
Yeah, what's the most interesting photographer you've discovered lately?
You?
Besides
I'm
me.
glad to have you on the show, damn it.
This is a good question. What photo do you wish you had taken? Oh, boy.
The list is long on that one.
Decisive moment. That would have been nice.
The leaping over the puddle
Yeah,
in the back
I would have
of
liked
the
to have
train
had the
station.
most
Oh,
famous
my
Cartier-Bresson
gosh.
picture
Yeah.
ever taken.
Yeah,
that would have been
that's-
nice. What's the best way to discover new photographers today, Peter?
I'm looking more and more at the history of photography and less at new stuff.
Yeah.
The contemporary show, there's a lot of great stuff, but you have to wade through a lot more nonsense to get to it.
Yeah.
The stuff that's modern from the past century, you know, the worst of it's been kind of been winnowed out already. Probably a lot of great stuff too, because the names never caught on.
That's the thing about negatives and digital photography is that negatives were sort of, you know, you could see the steps of how that picture was taken and why they chose it off the contact sheet. It gives you a great understanding of these guys aren't taking perfect pictures all the time.
Right.
And it gives you confidence as a young photographer. And yet I think that is gone
Yeah.
because nobody's producing contact sheets anymore.
I never shot film professionally in my life. I mean, I'm part of that generation that
Sure.
was weaned on digital, so that's all very natural and comfortable for me. And if I was in a position that I had to shoot film, I don't quite know
How you do it?
what I would do. 36 frames, it's crazy. I stick a CF card or whatever in my camera and I've got 1,000 pictures.
I like that process too, but I also enjoy the process of starting and stopping. You know, it's like a breath in a scene. You know, it's like you take a step back and allow something else to react. And then, you know, I mean, for portraiture, it works nicely to be able to distance yourself a little bit from what you're doing and from what your subject is doing.
Yeah.
And to make that, and to give that breath. Anyway, I wanted to thank both of you for joining me today on Capture. It's been enlightening in so many ways. And Aaron Eckhart, who is a friend of mine and an amazing actor and an amazing photographer, we wish you all the luck with your new movie, Olympus Has Fallen. And Peter von Agtmael, who we have had an incredible time looking at your journey, and you have a book coming out, Disco Night, September 11th.
It's not a title that just came out of the blue, but it was a sign I photographed in upstate New York a few years ago. And it was right before the 9th anniversary of September 11th.
Okay.
And the book in a lot of ways is about these wars, but also the detachment from our society from these wars. And that sign in many ways symbolized it for me.
When does the book come out?
Probably late summer, early fall.
Early fall.
Yeah.
Great. We're looking forward to seeing that. And maybe we can do this again sometime.
It's wonderful.
Go out there and do some work.
Yeah. I could see just sort of in the distance, there were hundreds of rocks in the air. Not close enough to hit me yet at that point, but it was like a flock of birds.
I dream about their futures. Where are they now? What are they doing? And how I was in their life for that little bit of time.
If you're photographing something like war, you don't alter or distort beyond the very act of taking pictures.
It's a solo thing, man. I mean, you can be in control of, you can be creating art by yourself and wherever you are in the world at day or night, you know? And that's an actor's best friend.
Pharrell Williams here.
Hi, I'm Joy Bryant,
I'm Eric Ripper,
I'm Tom Colicchio.
I'm Dr. Frank Lipman,
the host of On the Table.
the host of Across the Board.
host of Artist Talk.
Host of Hooked Up.
Host of the show, Be Well Week, Be Well Weekend, on the Reserve Channel.
It's only on Reserve.
Did you know that you can follow my show on social media sites like Facebook?
Follow us on Twitter.
If you're a fan of my show, hit the like button.
All of the above.
Share me with your friends.
Treat yourself. You know, check out a new episode of my show, Hooked Up.
And if you want to leave comments, feedbacks, ideas, whatever, love to hear from you. Leave a comment.
And if you don't want to miss the show, be sure to subscribe.
The one that's like down here, or is it here? Somewhere down here.
Thanks for watching the Reserve channel.
Only on YouTube. Throw caution to the wind and ask yourself what rules.